Now, let us read from another section of the Roar of the Ganges. Then we'll do a mantra for the Divine Feminine, and we'll call it a day. This book takes place in India, on the banks of the Ganges, a river in North India. Well, goes throughout a lot of India. It's a very spiritually revered river, also known as the Ganga. Here we take a journey through the eyes of Mark. Mark was a computer scientist who was newlywed and newly divorced. He was then known as Swami Tadatmananda after he took sannyas and became a monk, who is the author of this book. And he has given me his expressed permission, with prayers and best wishes, to read this book to all of you. I inquired if I needed to encourage you all to buy it, since I knew that I was essentially giving a free audiobook of it. And he politely affirmed to me that this book will be made as a free PDF, so you don't need to buy it in the near future. This journey takes us towards his taking of sannyas, becoming a monk, and all of his thoughts, contradictions, debates with himself and others before finally making that decision to be a spiritual renunciant. And thank you, this is my show, for your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paper cranes. 8, if I counted correctly now. Many of them. Radhe, Radhe. Very humbling. Lots of origami. I love it. In the office, I was introduced to the brahmachari, the student who served as Swami Brahmananda's secretary. This Swami Brahmananda is someone that he was looking forward to meet, as he has heard a lot about. He said I could meet the Swami at 5 p.m. I hoped Swami Prakash, his friend that took him there, would not mind if I missed his chanting class. At the appointed time, I gently knocked at the door to Swami Brahmananda's room. I was greeted by a willowy man in his 70s, whose brown face was deeply creased with wrinkles. Gray stubble crossed his recently shaved head. His frail body was wrapped in faded ochre robes, yet his sparkling eyes suggested a vitality far younger than his years. His robust smile conveyed warmth and kindness. He escorted me inside and sat on his cot. I touched his feet with reverence and sat before him on a small woven mat spread on the floor. I glanced around his sparsely furnished room. Only a cot, cabinet, and 2 low tables stood on the bare cement floor. One table, cluttered with books, papers, and personal items, apparently served as his desk. The room was illumined by a single bare light bulb hanging by its wires from the ceiling. The walls were unadorned, except for a brightly colored Hindu calendar identifying auspicious days and religious festivals. The 2 windows were covered by screens and steel bars, screens for mosquitoes, and bars for monkeys. His modest room was typical of ashram accommodations throughout India. By Western standards, however, it might have resembled a prison cell. In fact, rooms in monasteries everywhere are commonly referred to as cells, and their occupants are frequently called inmates. Nevertheless, the Swami seemed quite comfortable with his accommodations. Swami Brahmananda cast his gentle eyes upon me and asked, "I was told that you know my dear friend, Gangadhara. How is he?" "Yes, Swamiji," I replied politely. Swami Gangadhara is a good friend of mine. He is doing quite well. He moved to New York and is going by his old name, Peter, these days. He asked me to convey his regards to you." "He moved to New York?" "Yes, Swamiji. He enrolled in Columbia University and is studying Sanskrit and Indian philosophy." "Ah, that is very good," the Swami remarked. "And you? Are you also studying at Columbia University?" "No, Swamiji. I recently completed a 3-year course in Vedanta and Sanskrit as taught by Swami Dayananda at his ashram in America." "In America? Is there so much interest in Vedanta in America?" "Well, certainly not as much as here in India, but American students are very dedicated. I was one of a group of 50 students. All of them were bright and highly motivated." "Yes, I know that American students are very dedicated. Swami Gangadhara was one of my brightest students." "I'm not surprised," I said. "He told me how much you had taught him. That's why I wanted to come and meet you." "Did it freeze for everyone?" "Donsuela, you share that it froze. For me it seems that it's not frozen." I think it might have been her internet. But nonetheless, we can have a conscious pause in case that it returns. All right. Our conversation quickly shifted to Vedanta. Swami Brahmananda began to expound in a poetic but somewhat obscure manner about its ultimate truths. He declared life's highest goal to be a state of non-duality in which one exists utterly non-separate from Brahman, absolute reality. He said, "We have fallen under the spell of Maya, an incomprehensible force that spins a web of illusion and deludes us all, making the unreal seem real and the real seem unreal. When the veil of Maya is pierced," he explained, "you discover the Atma shining within as Shuddha Chaitanya, pure consciousness, brilliant and self-luminous like the sun. It is forever pure, untainted by the mundane world, just as sunlight remains untainted when it falls on a filthy gutter. It is limitless and infinite, like the vast ocean into which all the world's mighty rivers continuously flow. This consciousness pervades the universe as the very substratum of existence. It is the ultimate reality, the supreme Brahman. You must dive deep within your heart to discover the infinite bliss of Brahman. When you achieve utter absorption in the state of samadhi, your ego will dissolve. Then you will merge with Brahman like a doll made of salt dissolving into the ocean. After merging with Brahman, you will abide in the state of non-duality. It was easy to see why Peter had been so enthralled by Swami Brahmananda's teachings. The elderly Swami was indeed an inspiring teacher. He seemed genuinely saturated with the vision of the sages. In his presence, I felt momentarily transported to dizzying spiritual heights, as I vicariously enjoyed his ethereal, breathtaking perspective. I had glimpsed these rarefied environs before, elevated by the inspired vision of other teachers. But after each of my brief ascents, I descended again to the mundane planes of limited experience. Those teachers had guided me to stunning insights, but not to an abiding, unwavering vision. Clarity came for me later with the help of my guru's more methodical approach in which we systematically unfold these same teachings. After a few moments' reflection, I remarked, "In the presence of someone like you, Swamiji, it seems possible to experience these highest truths, at least momentarily. But those insights seem to fade so quickly, like delicate flowers under the blazing summer sun. How can one transform momentary insights into abiding knowledge? How can one dwell continuously in the state of non-duality? Are there particular Vedanta texts that explain this well?" "You see," he continued, "it is a matter of theory and practice. Vedanta is just theory. It explains everything properly, but that is not enough. Without practice, without deep samadhi, you will never reach the state of non-duality. Merely reading a book on cooking will not teach you how to cook. You must go to the kitchen and practice. Scriptural study is like reading cookbooks. It is necessary, but it is not enough. You must practice samadhi. You must train yourself and meditate for hours each day. Only with such practice will you be successful." A warning bell sounded in my mind. I had heard this theory/practice metaphor discussed many times. This approach had been strongly criticized by traditional gurus, including those of the Kailash Ashram, for deviating from the original teachings of Shankara and the great rishis who preceded him. According to them, Vedanta is not just a theory, but a pramana, a self-sufficient means for discovering the truth of oneself. When I first heard this distinction, its significance escaped me. It seemed like splitting hairs, but as my process of inquiry continued, its importance grew apparent. Is it possible, I wondered, that Swami Brahmananda had fallen away, to some extent, from the traditional teachings of Vedanta? Under the circumstances, it would have been extraordinarily impolite for me to raise this issue with him. Besides, I had already taken too much of his time. But I looked forward to discussing this with Swami Dayananda after his arrival in Rishikesh. I thanked Swami Brahmananda for granting me the opportunity to meet him, especially on such short notice. He made me promise to deliver a message to Peter upon my return to America. I bent down to touch his feet once again before leaving. As I returned in a noisy auto rickshaw to our ashram, The setting sun cast its deep orange rays on the hillside. I was too late for chanting class, but thankfully in time for dinner. Unfortunately, we are all just in time for our chanting, which we will do before we end. And what a lovely encounter with Swami Brahmanananda on the difference between theory and practice. Thank you all for listening with me. And thank you for those who sent a gift whilst I read. Thank you.